Can you hear me, sir? Stay awake. That's an order. Marcus Whitfield had been a mechanic for 40 years, and in all that time, nobody had ever heard him raise his voice. Not until the night he found a stranger collapsed behind the diesel pumps of a truck stop outside Thunder Bay. Snow coming down sideways, the man's lips already the color of a bruise. Marcus didn't call for help first. He got down on the frozen concrete, pressed 2 fingers to the man's throat, and started barking commands like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. Just not for the last 30 years. Most people who pulled off Highway 17 at the Kestrel truck stop didn't look twice at the old black man in the coveralls, the one with grease under his nails and a limp he never explained. To them, he was just Marcus, the mechanic who kept the garage running, who fixed brakes for cash, and sometimes for nothing at all if the driver looked hungry enough. Nobody asked why a man his age still worked 12-hour shifts in a shop with 1 space heater and a roof that leaked when it rained. Nobody asked what he used to do before Thunder Bay. In a town like this, you didn't ask. You just accepted people the way they showed up. Marcus lived alone in a rented unit above a laundromat on Cumberland Street, 3 rooms that smelled faintly of dryer sheets no matter the season. He'd been there 11 years. The walls were bare except for 1 photograph, curling at the corners, of a woman named Eloise standing in front of a canvas field tent, somewhere in a country whose name he tried not to say out loud anymore. She'd been gone 6 years. Cancer had taken her slow, the way it takes people who spent their whole lives giving everything to strangers and had nothing left over to fight for themselves. Every morning, Marcus woke at 5:15, no alarm, same as always. He'd sit on the edge of the bed for exactly 1 minute. He never explained why, and nobody ever asked. Then he'd get up, put the kettle on, and head down to the garage before the sun cleared the tree line. His granddaughter Simone was the only family he had left, and she lived 2 hours south in Nipigon with her mother, a woman Marcus had never gotten along with but tried every week to call anyway. Simone was 17, bright, wanted to be a nurse. The tuition at Confederation College wasn't the problem. It was the residence fees, the books. The uniform costs nobody warned you about. Marcus had $11,000 in an envelope taped to the inside of his closet door. He needed 19. He did that math once at the kitchen table and never did it again. He worked the garage 6 days a week for $18 an hour, and on Sundays, the one day the shop was closed, he drove for a rideshare app in a Corolla with 210,000 kilometers on it, picking up whoever needed a ride from Thunder Bay to the smaller towns strung along the lake. It wasn't much. Some Sundays he cleared $40 after gas, other Sundays $90. He kept the numbers in a small spiral notebook from the dollar store, the same one he'd used for 6 years, its cover long gone, soft and gray at the edges. But here's the thing about Marcus Whitfield that mattered more than any number in that notebook. He never let the tiredness show on his face where a customer could see it. He waved at kids walking to school. He kept a coffee can of loose change by the garage door for anyone short on bus fare. He remembered the names of every trucker's dog. The world had taken most of what Marcus had to give, and somehow every single day he still found a little more. But the world wasn't finished with Marcus Whitfield yet. Not even close. Because what found him on that frozen stretch of pavement outside the truck stop would reach back into a part of his life he'd buried so deep, even his own granddaughter didn't know it existed. The storm rolled in off the lake with no warning at all. That's how it goes up there. The sky flat and gray 1 hour, and the next hour you can't see past your own headlights. Environment Canada had put out an alert around 6 that Marcus never checked, because he was 3 cars deep into a brake job and losing daylight fast. By 8, the wind had teeth in it. By 9, the snow wasn't falling anymore, it was being thrown. Marcus was locking up the garage, 1 glove already on, when he heard something under the wind. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one, the kind of stillness a body makes when it stops fighting the cold. He almost missed it. A shape slumped against the side of the diesel pump island, half buried already. No jacket, no hat, hands bare and curled in against his chest, like a man trying to hold himself together from the outside in. Marcus dropped his bag in the snow and ran. The man was maybe 70, thin gray stubble, a dress shirt soaked through and frozen stiff at the collar. His lips had gone that terrible shade of blue-gray Marcus hadn't seen in decades. Not since a different life, a different country, a different kind of cold. Marcus got down on one knee, tilted the man's chin, checked his breathing the way you check a pulse when you've done triage in the dark more times than you can count. "Sir, can you hear me? Stay awake. That's an order." The words came out before Marcus even registered them. The cadence, the command in his own voice, a rhythm he hadn't used since he was a young combat medic outside a base whose name he'd trained himself not to think about. The old man's eyes opened, pale and unfocused, confused in a way that went beyond just the cold. I don't know where I am. You're at the Kestrel off Highway 17. What happened to your coat?" The man's mouth worked without sound for a moment. His right hand was locked around something in his lap. A photograph, water-stained, the image nearly washed out. Marcus noticed the watch on the man's left wrist, heavy, gold, a tiny insignia at the crown that Stuka did not recognize, though he understood, in the animal part of his brain, that it cost more than every vehicle in his garage combined. "My wife," the man murmured, eyes drifting somewhere past Marcus's shoulder. "I was bringing her flowers." Where did the flowers go? He wasn't tracking. His whole body shook in a rhythm Marcus recognized immediately. Not shivering, something past shivering, something the body does right before it stops trying. Marcus looked around. The lot was empty. The diner attached to the truck stop had closed at 8. His phone showed 1 bar and 11% battery. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes on a good night, and tonight was not a good night. He didn't hesitate. Marcus pulled off his own coat. His father's coat, actually, a heavy canvas work jacket with a hand-stitched patch on the elbow where Ezra Whitfield had torn it on a fence wire 40 years earlier and refused to throw it out. Marcus had worn that jacket every winter since his father passed, the way some men carry a photograph. He draped it over the old man's shoulders without a second thought. "Son, no, I can't take this. You need it more than I do right now, sir." Marcus dug into his coverall pocket and came up with a folded 20, the only cash he had on him, meant for gas money to get him through to Sunday. He pressed it into the man's palm. "Take this too. There's a payphone by the door if your phone's dead. Get someone to come for you." The old man's fingers closed around the bill slowly, like he wasn't sure what it was for. Then he looked up, really looked, and something sharpened behind the confusion, something clear and sudden, there and then gone. "You don't even know me," he whispered. "Don't need to," Marcus said. "What's your name?" "Whitmore," the man said, and something crossed his face, like even the sound of his own name surprised him. "Just Whitmore." "All right, Mr. Whitmore. Let's get you inside." Marcus half-carried him into the garage, sat him by the space heater, wrapped a shop blanket over the borrowed coat, and called the only number that still made sense, his cousin Delroy, who drove tow trucks and lived close enough to get there in 15 minutes with his heater running full blast the whole way. While they waited, Whitmore's hand found Marcus's wrist. Not hard. Firm. The grip of a man used to being listened to. "That coat means something to you," Whitmore said quietly. "I can tell." "It was my father's." Whitmore went still. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, lower, deliberate, each word set down like a stone. "Then it's worth more than anything I could give you back." He paused. "I won't forget this. I need you to hear that." Marcus didn't catch the weight in those words. Not that night. He just nodded, tucked the blanket tighter around the old man's shoulders, and waited for Delroy's headlights to cut through the snow. They loaded Whitmore into the truck. He gripped Marcus's sleeve one more time from the passenger seat. "You'll see me again," he said. "I promise you that." Marcus offered the kind of smile that expects nothing back, shut the door, and watched the taillights disappear into the storm. He walked home that night with no coat at all, the wind cutting through his coveralls like a blade, snow packing into his boots with every step. By the time he climbed the stairs above the laundromat, his hands wouldn't work well enough to fit the key on the first try. He stood in the doorway a long moment, dripping onto the mat, then made himself a cup of tea he barely tasted and sat at the kitchen table with his spiral notebook. Under the earned column, he wrote a 0. Under saved, the number stayed the same, 11,412. Then, underneath, in handwriting smaller than usual, he wrote something he'd never written in that notebook before. Gave Dad's coat to a man at the truck stop. Hope he makes it. He looked at the hook on the back of the closet door, empty for the first time in 6 winters, and told himself it didn't matter as much as it felt like it did. Then he went to bed. 3 blocks away, in the back of a black car that had been searching half the county for him, a man named Whitmore was already making a phone call. But Marcus didn't know that yet. He woke up sore the next morning, throat scratchy, a cold creeping in behind his eyes. He pulled on an old flannel over his coveralls, thinner, wrong, missing something, and walked down to the garage, feeling the gap where the coat used to be. His boss, a wiry old Ukrainian named Tomas who'd owned the shop for 30 years, noticed right away. "Where's your coat, Marcus?" "Gave it to a man last night. He needed it worse than me." Tomas stared at him a long beat. "Your father's coat?" "Yes." Tomas shook his head slowly, said nothing else, but Marcus caught the look, half admiration, half worry, the look people give a man whose heart runs bigger than his bank account. The day passed the way most days did. Brake pads, an oil change, a delivery of parts he had to sign for twice because the driver's handwriting was illegible. Around noon, Marcus stepped outside for a smoke he didn't finish and noticed a black sedan parked across the street, engine running, windows tinted dark. It hadn't been there an hour before. He watched it a second, then went back inside. When he came out again, it was gone. That evening, doing a rideshare run downtown to cover a late fare, Marcus dropped a passenger at the base of a glass tower near Marina Park, one of those buildings he'd never had reason to enter. While he waited for the elevator to bring his next fare down, something on the lobby wall caught the light, a name etched in brass beside the elevator doors. Ashworth Whitmore Resources, founded 1968. Beneath it, smaller R, Whitmore, Chairman Emeritus. Marcus stared at it, the bench, the rain, the man's hand locked around his wrist. "I won't forget this." Couldn't be. He shook his head and drove off, but the name rode home with him in the passenger seat the whole way. 2 days after the storm, Marcus had nearly talked himself out of the whole thing, filed it under strange coincidences that don't mean anything, because that's what a man does when he's 58, and still counting nickels. It was a Thursday. He was halfway under a minivan, elbow deep in a brake line, when Tomas's voice came through tight and careful from the front of the shop. "Marcus, someone's here for you." The woman standing just inside the garage door wore a charcoal wool coat that probably cost more than Marcus's rent for the year. Silver hair pulled back clean, a leather portfolio under one arm. "Marcus Whitfield?" "That's me. My name is Adeline Pierce. I'm the executive assistant to the chairman emeritus of Ashworth Whitmore Resources." She let that settle. "I believe you met him 2 nights ago, outside in the storm." Tomas gripped the edge of his workbench. "In Thunder Bay, you didn't hear a name like Whitmore in a garage bay. You heard it in the paper on the side of buildings downtown, on the news when they talked about the mining contracts up north. Mr. Whitmore would like to see you if you're willing. He's sent a car." Marcus looked past her through the open bay door. At the curb sat a long black limousine, polished despite the slush, a driver standing beside the rear door with his hands folded. On the panel, a small brass crest caught the light, the same one from the lobby wall. Adeline's expression softened, just barely. "Mr. Whitmore has been managing some memory difficulties. Early stage. The night you found him was the anniversary of his wife Eleanor's passing. 26 years. He'd asked his driver to take him to the cemetery. On the way back, he became confused, got out of the car without anyone noticing. His security team searched for him nearly 4 hours." She paused. "They found him at 11 that night, wearing a coat that wasn't his, holding a $20 bill in his fist. He wouldn't let go of either one. He described you, your name, everything you said. His memory of that night, oddly, is completely intact." She opened the portfolio and held out a thick cream card embossed in gold. "Ashworth R. Whitmore, Chairman Emeritus. Build something that outlasts you. He'd like to thank you in person. No obligation." Thomas nodded once, slow. "Go, Marcus. I'll cover the bay." Marcus rode downtown in silence, the leather seat warmer than anything he owned, the city looking different from behind glass like that. By the time the elevator opened on the top floor, he understood, somewhere in his chest, that the smallest thing he'd done in years was about to become the largest. The office had floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the harbor, the grain elevators, the gray sprawl of the town stretching toward the hills, and there in a leather chair by the window sat Ashworth Whitmore. Clean now, rested, a navy suit, silver hair combed back. Draped over the chair beside him, folded with care, was the canvas coat with the patch on the elbow. "You look different dry," Whitmore said. "So do you, sir." Whitmore's smile reached all the way to his eyes. "I owe you a debt, Marcus, and I don't say that lightly. I've spent 50 years putting a number on everything I own. I have not been able to put a number on what you did for me on that bench." He gestured to the coat. "I had it cleaned, but I made sure nobody touched a single stitch. It belongs to you." Marcus took it, pressed it once against his chest, and said nothing for a moment. "Adeline tells me you have a granddaughter, Simone. Bright, wants to be a nurse. Confederation College, but the residence fees are the problem." Marcus straightened. "I want to cover it," Whitmore said. "All of it. Tuition, residence, books, whatever comes after if she wants to keep going. And your rent, Adeline found you're 2 months behind. That's finished as of today. There's a men's shelter and community kitchen on Cumberland Street that's been shuttered 3 years. I've already spoken with the city. We're funding a full renovation, job training, a small business incubator, tutoring space. All of it free." Marcus's vision blurred. He wiped his eyes fast, the way men his age do when they don't want it seen. "Why?" he said. "I gave you a coat and $20. Whitmore stood, walked to the window and looked out at the gray rooftops in the distance. "Because in 50 years of building companies, Marcus, nobody has ever given me something worth more than what you gave me on that bench. You gave me proof that the kind of person I've spent my whole life hoping still existed actually does." He reached into his jacket and drew out a folded, water-stained 20, sliding it across the desk. "I'm keeping the memory," he said. "That belongs to you." The story broke on a Friday. The local paper first, then the CBC affiliate by evening, then national by the weekend. A grainy photo of Marcus in his coveralls ran beside a corporate headshot of Whitmore under a headline about a mechanic and a mining magnate and a Thunder Bay snowstorm. Marcus found out he was on television when his cousin Delroy called the garage phone, screaming that Marcus's face was on Channel 7. What came after was real, all of it. The shelter reopened in 10 weeks, crews working weekends alongside neighborhood volunteers, Marcus hauling drywall on Saturdays, same as anyone. Tomaz was the first through the new small business program, walked out with actual bookkeeping software after 15 years of doing it on the backs of envelopes. Simone started at Confederation College that spring, full ride, and called her grandfather every Sunday night just to talk. And 3 weeks after the shelter reopened, Marcus started something of his own. He called it 20 and Forward. Once a month, folks in the building would do one small kindness for a stranger and pin a card about it to a corkboard in the lobby. No contest, no prize, just stories. Within 4 months, 2 other shelters across the region had copied it. A year later, Marcus was walking home from a late shift, his father's coat zipped to the collar, snow coming down soft and steady the way it does when it isn't trying to hurt anybody. His route took him past the Kestrel, same as most nights, and same as most nights he slowed down at the diesel pumps out of habit. Tonight the spot wasn't empty. A boy sat against the pump island, maybe 16, a jacket too thin for the season, a duffel bag at his feet with a name tag from the grocery store on Balmoral clipped to the strap. Marcus stopped. "You okay?" "I'm fine. Just waiting on my ride. Nobody's coming down this road tonight." "Not in this." The boy's shoulders dropped. Marcus unzipped his father's coat without another thought and held it out. "Take this. I've made the walk without one before. Trust me." The boy hesitated, then took it, sleeves too long, the way it had once been too long on Marcus. "Thank you," he said quietly. Marcus smiled the same smile from a year before, the kind that expects nothing back, and walked home in the cold with no complaints at all, the snow settling soft on his shoulders the whole way. And that's where this one ends. Or maybe it just starts over again. Because Marcus Whitfield never cured anything, never went viral on purpose, never built an empire. He just stopped walking when nobody else would, gave what little he had left, and never once asked for it back. So I'll ask you the same thing I always ask. If it was your last $20 and the only thing your father left behind, would you have given it away? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this one got you somewhere in the chest, hit that like button. Send it to somebody who needs it tonight. Subscribe if you haven't yet. We tell stories like this every week. Sometimes the smallest thing you almost didn't do turns out to be the biggest thing you ever will.